signs. All I see is dollar signs. Money on my mind. Money on my mind.
What's up, everyone? This is the training video to go over the Excel portion of the Programs Finance Committee's budget packet. And I'm just going to step you through this thing and hopefully clear up any questions or confusion that you may or may not have during this process. So, this is the Excel file. For those who have done this in the past, it looks a little bit different, but for those who are new, this is what the main page looks like. This is what the most important tab is in the Excel file. And it breaks everything down in line items. And the new thing that we added this year is that there are the line items that represent how much money you actually spent out of that line. Other than that, everything else is pretty much the same. Alright, so the first thing that you want to do is go ahead and fill out your program name at the top. We are going to be the controller's office for this example. And our fake index is going to be OS000I. And make sure you do this first because it feeds through all the other tabs so it looks nice and it'll have your name, such as this, at the top. So you don't have to go into each tab and enter your name. Alright, so we're going to go over the first tab, and this is the administrative expenses, payroll, and stipend amounts, but I will go over stipends at the end of the video. So let's just go over administrative expenses. And these are just all the expenses that your group's going to incur to basically keep your group running throughout the year. So examples are office supplies, well, you can see them all here. But office supplies, if your group has a telephone in your office, or printing expenses, things like this. All you're going to do is fill out the white area of each line, and it's going to add it at the bottom there. So for an example, we're going to go through here and just pick out some random things. So as you can see, it's adding at the bottom, and all this information is going to feed into the first tab. So if we go back here, you can see that under the administrative expenses, we have the total of $750 that we are requesting under the request column here for 2014 to 2015. And under each line, it has the amounts there. Alright, the next task you're going to do is you got to fill out these three columns, which are the last 3 years that you have requested and how much you have spent, or not how much you've requested, but how much you were allocated at the beginning of each of those years. So let's pull up an example of a fake Excel file that we have, and you are going to get these Excel files through email. So if you do not get those from us, you can contact us and we can email those to you as soon as we can. So you're just going to go through all this information, and it does not matter if you are requesting it for next year or not. As long as you've had it in the last 3 years, you're going to include it in those columns. So here's our administrative expenses. So I would go ahead and just fill out all this information under the original budget column, and I will go put that into the budget packet. So first I would probably go through and I would put how much I got in these last couple years. So let's just say that this year we started off with $50 Last year we had 40, and the year before that we had 30. And then under this spent line for that, you can find that under the expense column here. So for office supplies we spent 50. And I guess in that example we started with 65. So I would just put the 50 here under the spent. And of course I would do that in all 3 years. Alright, so all these numbers are coming from 3 different Excel files from the last 3 years. And I'm going to go ahead and fill out all of these until I have filled out all the ones that I am requesting for next year, and or if I've had any of these line items in the last 3 years. So for an example, let's just say that under the in-state travel line item, we are not requesting anything for next year, but in the last 3 years we've had a starting balance of $100. I would still include that in there, just like that. So we're requesting 0, but in the last 3 years we've had 100, and let's just say that in all those years we've spent all of it, so we spent 100 each year for it. Alright, so that goes over administrative expenses. And don't worry about all the extra lines. If you don't use them, you can keep them as is, and we will fix those after you turn it in. Alright, the next area that we're going to talk about is the programming expenses. So this is the area for all your events that you put on during the year, or conferences that you go on, and things like that. So all this information in this first column are represented by all the tabs at the bottom after the administrative expense tab. So I'm going to go ahead and fill out an example event just to see what it looks like. So let's go into this first tab. So let's see. Last year we had a line item called controller dinner. So we want to keep that event going because it was a fun event. So I recommend starting with events that you're going to continue, or new events for next year, and then at the end you're going to have to start including the events that you aren't going to fund but you still need to fill out the information on that first tab, and I'll show you what that looks like. So let's go ahead and fill this one out for that activity. So at the top, just put the name of the event. And it's going to be called controller dinner. I would also name the tab at the bottom so you are more organized when you're filling this thing out, so it'll be easy to go back and forth from tab to tab. You can do that by right clicking on the tab and click rename. Alright, so this event is broken down into different areas, and within each area it has line items. So these are all the common line items that could represent an event, and if you're expecting to have any expenses that are other than this, we have some miscellaneous at the bottom that you can just add in. And if you need more lines other than that, let us know and we can do that for you. So let's just say for this event we want to advertise it. We want to put it in the Daily Emerald, of course. So we're going to put $100 there. We got to buy some decorations, of course. Probably some balloons and streamers. We're also going to rent out the ballroom in the EMU. And this is all coming from past research that my group has done to plan for these events for next year. And it can't be the controller dinner without some food. So we're going to put some food there, some drink money. Alright. And that is it for this event. After you include all the amounts, I would then go into the description areas and fill those out. Each line that you're requesting money, you should be filling out the description. So an example is for this one, so we're advertising in the Daily Emerald. This one, buying balloons. Oops. And so forth. So make sure that each line you have a pretty descriptive description on what you're going to buy, or a good idea of what you're going to buy. So all this information gets pulled up to the top here, so it splits it up between food and non-food, and then the total. And all this information gets inputted into the first tab. So as you can see here, under the 1415 request, under the controller dinner, because the information feeds, we're requesting $350 for non-food and $110 for food. And after I fill out all of the requests for next year, I'm then going to go into my last 3 years Excel files, and I'm going to fill out how much money we were allocated at the beginning of each year, and I'm also going to include how much money we spent out of each line item. And these amounts do not include any surplus requests. It is how much your group started with at the beginning of the year. So you can find all that information under the original budget column. And for the spent, you can find that under the expense line item, or the expense column. So for this event, we started with this amount and we spent $7,000. And looks like we didn't have any food line items for this, so we would put, we had 0 and we spent 0. And then you're also going to fill out this year and 11 and 12 and this year, or this current year. Now there are the spent line items, but you do not have to worry about how much money you've spent this year, because that information is irrelevant because the year isn't over yet. So you can leave those areas blank if you wish, only for this current year, for 13-14, under the spent lines. So this one would be blank, and this one would be blank. You can just leave them blank. You don't have to put anything in there. Alright, so you're then just going to go tab to tab, and there's 10 of these tabs, and if you need to add any more, contact us and we can help you with that. But just to show you an example of an event that we have had in one of the last 3 years, or all of the 3 last years, but we do not want to continue that next year. So what I would do is, let's just say that, as an example, we have a controller retreat that we've had in the last 3 years, but we don't want to have it next year. We had that much. So I'm going to go ahead and still add the activity under one of the tabs. I'm just not going to put any information in because we're not requesting anything. And I would also change it at the bottom. So as you can see, under the controller retreat, we're requesting 0, and then I would then go through and fill out all of this information. So let's just say that each year we requested 2,000 and each year we spent all of the 2,000. We just do that. And also include if there was any food involved, obviously. Alright, and that's about it. You just go through year to year. It might be a little tedious to add all these numbers in, but at the end you're going to have all these lines filled out depending on how many events that you have. At the bottom here it totals each amount at the beginning of each year. So to check your numbers under each of these columns, the final 11-12 budget columns, you can look to see if this number matches this number here. And if it does, then you did that correctly. And at the end, you're also going to go into the last 3 years and put the percent that you've used at the end of the year. So if you go back to one of the Excel files, that number is found here at the bottom. So for 2012 and 13, we used 43% by the end of the year. So I would just put 43 in there, just like that. Alright, so lastly, let's go over some stipend information. So you can go ahead and fill out what your group was allocated in the last 3 years and how much you've spent. And then we are going to be changing up what kind of information we need for stipends for next year. So what you can do is go to the controller's website, and there's a document that you can find that is called the student leadership position for stipends. One second. So basically, to request a stipend, your group's going to need to fill this thing out. You're going to put your group information at the top here. You're also then going to talk about the positions of the stipend people. So how does this position fulfill the mission of your group in the ASUO? And you'd fill out there. And you're also going to divide what types of positions you have. So if you have a director position, you would put that. And then you would also put what they do in that position. So let's say that you have one director and one treasurer and one, organizer person. You would split those up into each job and you would do a description for each. But let's just say that you have 2 directors and they have the same function. You can just put those job titles and their tasks just in one description. You're also going to fill out the learning and leadership development opportunities. So how does this position encourage learning and leadership growth for the student who holds the position? You're also going to talk about how you find these people to represent the group and have these positions, and include what the hour requirements are, so how long they're going to be in the position for. Is it an all-year thing or just part of the year? And also if they're going to have office hours and things like that. And then just fill out the bottom there. And like I said, to get a stipend for next year, you need to fill this out, which just describes all the information relevant to the stipend positions. Alright, so going back to the Excel file, you can get the stipend information for next year. If your group has a stipend currently, I would just request the same amount. And if currently the stipend amounts have not come out yet for next year, so if you just want to go ahead and fill out the same number, if your group does have a stipend, just go ahead and fill out the same number, and if it does change, then we will change that for you and you won't have to worry about it. But you're just going to go to this first tab, and at the top, this is where you fill out the stipend information. So let's just say last year or this year, we were given $2,500 for stipends. I would just go ahead and just put that there. And under that, if your group does have payroll employees, you can go ahead and fill out the information there. And as always, both of those information are going to go to the first tab right here. Alright, and that wraps up the Excel file of the budget packet for the program's finance committee. Again, if you have any questions about filling this thing out, or if it's not working properly, feel free to contact us. You can go to the ASUO website and go under the controller tab at the top and find all of our contact information. And as always, follow us on Twitter at ASUOcomp at the @ symbol. And that's about it. Thank you for watching, and good luck with your budget packets.